special presentation of Fox 8 News. You Decide 2012.
Welcome to a Fox 8 News election special, You Decide 2012. I'm Jennifer Jordan, along with Gabe Spiegel and Christy Capel.
In the next hour, we will profile some of the biggest races you'll be voting on November 6th.
And we begin with the biggest race of all, the race for the White House. Here's Fox 8's Mark Zinni.
If you want the Oval Office, you better win Ohio. Frequent visits to our state by both President Obama and Mitt Romney are proof of just that. President Obama won Ohio back in 2008, and he knows that to win re-election, he has to do it again. It's an election season that has brought President Obama to Ohio.
Hello, Buckeyes!
Over and over.
OH! OH!
The president courting the crucial vote in this battleground state, which he won in 2008. And each time he's here, he reminds voters of his accomplishments.
4 years ago, I told you I'd end the war in Iraq, and we did. I said I'd end the war in Afghanistan, and we are. I said we'd refocus on the people who actually attacked us on 9/11, and today Osama bin Laden is dead. 4 years ago, I promised to cut taxes for middle-class families, and we have by $3,600.
President Obama's campaign speech echoing through the heartland, where he's quick to mention his tax cuts on small business owners, the bank rescue money getting paid back, and of course, his health care law that was upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court.
We passed health care reform, also known as Obamacare, because I do care. I don't want insurance companies jerking you around anymore.
But here in Ohio, the president also courts the car-making vote by touting the auto bailout.
And we reinvented a dying auto industry that supports 1 in 8 Ohio jobs and has come roaring back to the top of the world.
For the first time since taking office, unemployment was under 8%. According to the Labor Department, for the month of September, unemployment dipped to 7.8% for the first time in 4 years.
Now, we're not there yet. We've still got too many Americans who are looking for work and too many families who can't pay the bills. But if there's one thing I know, Ohio, it's this. We have come too far to turn back now. And the last thing we can afford to do right now is to go back to the very same policies that got us into this mess in the first place. I cannot allow that to happen. I will not allow it to happen. That's why I'm running for a second term as President of the United States.
But according to the president, a first term with Governor Romney, if he won, would be a failure before it even started.
A strong economy doesn't trickle down from the top. It grows from a thriving middle class. I believe it's time our tax code stopped rewarding companies that ship jobs overseas. Let's reward small businesses and manufacturers who are making products right here in Ohio, products stamped with 3 proud words, made in America. That's the choice in this election.
President Obama also says he wants to recruit 100,000 math and science teachers, provide job training at community colleges, and cut the growth of college tuition costs in half, which is well received during his frequent college rallies.
The values that we are fighting for don't belong to one party or one group. They're not black or white or Hispanic or Asian or Native American or gay or straight or disabled or not disabled. They are American values. They belong to all of us. I still believe in you, and I'm asking you to keep believing in me. Ohio, I'm asking you for your vote.
Republican candidates carried Ohio in 2000 and 2004 before President Obama won the state in 2008. Mitt Romney knows he has to turn the blue state red again to capture the White House in November. First of all, Governor, welcome back to Ohio.
Thanks, Mark. Good to be here.
The former governor of Massachusetts sitting down with Fox 8 News several times over the course of the campaign, including a Monday in September when he rallied with supporters in Mansfield. Afterwards, I asked the Republican nominee first about the tone of the campaign.
I think the president's campaign, which has been highly divisive and has been focused on personal attacks, I think has really disturbed a lot of people. I think we should keep our discussion to the issues, and we can talk about our differences on issues and our differences in terms of our record, but these kind of personal attacks, I just think bring down the credibility and the dignity of the White House.
To win the White House, Governor Romney is focused on winning Ohio, where he says people can't take 4 more years of President Obama's policies.
No question. As I go across Ohio, what I hear day in and day out is people concerned about their jobs going forward, concerned about lower incomes, so they need more take-home pay. The costs of gasoline, health care, food, almost everything have gone up, and people don't see rising wages. They want some help. So my focus is getting more jobs and more take-home pay.
Unemployment situation nationally versus here in the state of Ohio. Of course, Ohio's doing a little better perhaps than the rest of the country. There's a Republican governor here. Perhaps President Obama would like to take some of the credit for what's happening here in Ohio. Is that a difficult kind of thing for you to balance when you come here to the state?
I think it's a real recognition that when you have pro-growth policies like Governor Kasich has put in place here, you're going to do better than if you have the kind of draconian anti-job growth, high tax, anti-business approaches that some other states have pursued. And when you have a state that's doing the right things, you're going to see better job growth. When you have a nation that encourages those same policies, well, you're going to see things even better here in Ohio.
The former governor considers himself pro-jobs, who promises, quote, pro-job creator policies.
Ohio's still not back to the level it ought to be. With rising wages and lots of jobs coming in, that can happen again, but it's going to take a Washington to put in place the same kind of policies you're seeing Governor Kasich fight for here. There's no question but that business and employment is going to do better if I become the president.
Governor Romney's 2008 New York Times opinion piece, "Let Detroit Go Bankrupt," has been an issue in Ohio, where the White House says 850,000 workers are tied to the auto industry. Do you feel you're making progress in reaching out to them in the wake of the op-ed that was written a few years ago?
Well, my posture was that the auto industry needed to go through bankruptcy to emerge stronger. It took the president about 6 months to reach the same conclusion because, as you know, he took General Motors and Chrysler through bankruptcy. Now the industry has come back. I'm delighted that it's doing better, that people are able to have jobs. I'm sorry that so many people in Ohio have lost jobs in the auto industry. There's still a long way to go.
Thank you very much, Governor Romney. I appreciate it. Polling results here in Ohio have run nearly dead even for most of the campaign. All eyes will be on Ohio on election night as our state once again helps to decide the biggest race of all. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Mark. You Decide 2012, a Fox 8 News election special, is just getting underway.
Coming up next, the fight for Ohio's Senate seat has been a bitter battle. We'll talk with Senator Sherrod Brown and his opponent, State Treasurer Josh Mandel.
And later, Ohio's key congressional races. Redistricting has turned this election upside down, and you will hear from the candidates straight ahead. Stay with us.
For more, visit fox8.com.
The race for Senate in Ohio is up next.
Welcome back to You Decide 2012, a Fox 8 News election special.
Fox 8's Lou Maglio sat down with both candidates in what has become a war of words. Lou.
The race for Ohio Senator has played out on TVs across the state in a very bitter and expensive battle. Democrat incumbent Senator Sherrod Brown versus State Treasurer and Republican candidate Josh Mandel. Recently, I talked issue with both candidates, starting with Senator Brown.
Senator Sherrod Brown has seen a lot of tough races over the years, but he says he's never been involved in anything quite like this one, his race for re-election against Josh Mandel.
There's been $16 million in attack ads from outside the state, and this wouldn't be a race if it weren't for that money that's been, attacking my integrity and my record for most of the last 15, 16, 17 months. And I've run campaigns that are honest. I've run campaigns that I speak very precisely about my plans, what I would do once in office. My opponent has run campaigns, particularly this one, that's just rife with inaccuracies and lies.
And that's not all. He accuses his youthful 34-year-old Republican opponent of being a political opportunist who's not ready for the big stage of the U.S. Senate.
I wake up every day figuring out how do we create jobs in this state and in this country, whether it's the auto restructuring that's brought real jobs to Parma, for instance, and help Northeast Ohio, whether it's things like trade enforcement, which means jobs in Lorain and Cleveland and Youngstown, a new steel factory. My opponent wakes up every morning looking for the next job to run for.
Mandel frequently criticizes Brown's record on job creation, but Brown stands behind that record.
And we're coming back, not fast enough. The unemployment rate, though, in Ohio 2.5 years ago was over 10.5%. Now it's under 7.5%. Again, it's not good enough, but we're making major progress. And I don't want to go back, as my opponent suggests, to more trickle-down economics, more tax cuts for the rich, more deregulation of Wall Street, more busting the budget. And the middle class continues to limp along.
He says many Ohio jobs were saved because of his work enforcing fair trade rules.
Auto industry crucial to the state of Ohio. Brings up the matter of the auto bailout. What do you think?
If GM and Chrysler had fallen into bankruptcy, unstructured, even with a structured bankruptcy, there were no funders, no investors, no hedge funds, no anybody that was willing to step up and infuse cash into Chrysler and GM and into the top of the supply chain, those tier 1 and 2 auto suppliers who provide more jobs in Northeast Ohio even than the original equipment manufacturers, Chrysler, Ford, and GM.
Another big issue in the state of Ohio with so many seniors is the subject of Medicare. Both sides have ideas about how to slow the growth. What's your idea?
What my opponent and some others, Governor Romney, proposes for Medicare is you basically get a coupon book, and then it's up to you to figure out where to spend that. And I don't think people want choice of insurance companies when they're 80 years old or 65 years old. I think they want a choice of doctors and a choice of hospitals.
He believes Medicare efficiencies can be found like direct negotiations with drug companies. As for the deficit,
I take a backseat to nobody in deficit reduction.
He calls for smart cuts in defense spending, elimination of farm subsidies. He'd allow the Bush-era tax cuts for people making more than $250,000 a year to expire. He says he opposed the Iraq war and wants to get out of Afghanistan more quickly than the president's plan. And he's well aware of the public's current dim view of Congress.
I think many citizens, many voters are frustrated by all the infighting in Washington, one side against the other. How do you ever reach a compromise?
We really do have the same goals, very different philosophies to get there, but I think there's potential to come together.
Now to the man who wants to take away Sherrod Brown's Senate seat. He's young, he's brash, and he pulls no punches when it comes to his views on America. Ohio Treasurer and Republican candidate Josh Mandel.
Thanks for coming in. Appreciate it.
Josh Mandel is widely considered one of the rising stars of the Republican Party, and he bristles at criticism that he's too young for this, the U.S. Senate.
I'm young. I'm 34 years old. I look like I'm 19, but it's not about the age. It's about the miles.
And he has crammed a lot of miles into a few short years. 2 tours in Iraq with the U.S. Marines, Lyndhurst City Council, state representative, and his current job as Ohio State Treasurer. He says it makes him well prepared for the battles of Washington.
I know there's going to be a day when I go there, and there's going to be some political boss from the Republican side of the aisle is going to put his hand on my shoulder and say, listen, son, you better vote for this legislation or else I'm going to kick you off your committee. Or some lobbyist is going to say, listen, son, you better vote for this legislation or else I'm going to embarrass you in the media. I will look that lobbyist, that political boss in the eye and tell them, I don't work for them. My boss is the 11.5 million people of the state of Ohio, and no politician or lobbyist in Washington is going to push me around because I've been through tougher stuff than that.
He often touts his money management record as Ohio Treasurer, but he's taken some punches from opponent Senator Sherrod Brown and others.
You've articulated some of the successes you've had in the Treasurer's office, but what about this criticism? It's been reported that you've missed a lot of meetings while in the Treasurer's office, and instead you've been out there campaigning and fundraising.
First of all, Sherrod Brown is trying to distract from anything except the conversation about his record, because his record has shown over the past decade, Ohio has lost over 500,000 jobs and 3,500 factories. Here's the real record in the state treasurer's office. We have a 100% attendance record at meetings. Sometimes I go, sometimes I send staff. 100% attendance record.
Mandel is a limited government proponent who opposes bailouts.
No more Wall Street bank bailouts. Every Democrat and every Republican who voted for the Wall Street bank bailout was dead wrong. I'll say it to their face, I'll say it on TV, I'll say it anywhere. Every Democrat, every Republican who voted for that Wall Street bailout was dead wrong. It was fiscally irresponsible. It was morally wrong.
You've talked about repealing the Affordable Health Care Act, sometimes called Obamacare. Would you agree that certain provisions of the act have been positive and will continue to be positive? And second to that, what would you do to replace it?
I think we should have a conversation of replacing it with something that does include those important provisions like allowing kids to be on their parents' health insurance till age 26 and providing coverage for pre-existing conditions. But the overall legislation is a job killer for the state of Ohio.
How so?
This legislation puts a specific tax on these medical device manufacturers. It's called the medical device tax, but I don't call it that anymore. I call it a tax on innovation because it's going to tax innovators, creative thinking Northeast Ohioans who are creating jobs at these companies, and it's going to be a job killer.
He thinks lower tax rates across the board will grow the economy. He says the government spends too much on foreign aid, and he believes there's no need for big military bases in Germany, Italy, and other parts of Europe. He says the U.S. can't afford to babysit Afghanistan and needs to have a plan to get U.S. troops home, though he disagrees with telegraphing those plans. On a personal note, he says he's the grandson of blue-collar workers who still strongly influence his life and that he feels an obligation to give back.
By serving in the Marine Corps and by serving in public service in this respect. And I'm going to keep doing it as long as I feel that I'm making an impact for the people of the state of Ohio.
Some estimates have the race between Sherrod Brown and Josh Mandel costing well in excess of $25 million. A lot at stake on November 6th. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Lou. All right, up next, more of the races and more of the candidates one-on-one with Fox 8.
Up next, redistricting in Northeast Ohio. The battle lines have been redrawn, causing voter confusion and pitting members of Congress against each other.
And later, does Joe the Plumber have the tools to make it as an Ohio congressman? We will talk with him and his opponent, incumbent Marcy Kaptur. You Decide 2012, a Fox 8 News election special continues. Dennis Kucinich is out. Members of Congress are now facing each other in key races, and you may be voting in a different congressional district than your neighbor.
Yeah, redistricting has turned this election day upside down and inside out, and more change could be on the way following this election.
Fox 8's Bill Shield puts together the puzzle pieces of what redistricting means to Northeast Ohio.
All of us, of course, get to vote for president on Election Day, as well as for candidates running for statewide offices, like the Senate battle between Democrat Sherrod Brown and Republican Josh Mandel. But after that, it gets complicated and some say unfair.
The politicians in office are picking the voters, as opposed to the voters choosing the politicians.
State lawmakers get to draw congressional districts every 10 years. Since Republicans now control the State House, they got to draw the lines this time. And this is what they came up with, a hodgepodge that includes a strange-looking Lake Erie district. It runs along the lake from the western edge of Cuyahoga County all the way out towards Toledo.
You know, it's a ridiculous district.
When Ohio lost 2 seats in Congress due to national population shifts, that Lake Erie district was drawn to pit 2 incumbent Democrats against each other, Cleveland's Dennis Kucinich and Toledo's Marcy Kaptur. Kaptur won, likely in part because the Lake Erie district includes more voters that she had represented than Kucinich had.
The way the new lines are drawn, in my opinion, it would be very difficult for a Clevelander to win that seat.
Applegate and other mostly labor and Democratic interests want to stop state politicians from deciding political districts. If Issue 2 passes, appellate judges will appoint a 12-member bipartisan panel to draw the districts, 4 Republicans, 4 Democrats, and 4 independents. But not everyone agrees.
The medicine is worse than the disease. I think that we would end up with a panel of 12 unaccountable bureaucrats that basically can draw the lines as they see fit.
Republican State Senator Frank LaRose of Akron introduced a bill that would require politicians from both sides to participate in drawing new congressional districts, rather than leaving it to the party in charge, in this case his fellow Republicans, to draw those lines.
The problem is that oftentimes those are drawn to be politically advantageous. They want to create safe seats for people, and I believe that a competitive seat is a good thing.
If a politician is from a safe district, then he or she may only feel political pressure from within their own party. That is, Republicans to be more conservative and Democrats to be more liberal. So what does that do to the concept of politicians coming together to solve problems?
It's death to that concept. In fact, that's why we have the extreme politics we have, because of safe districts.
To think that you're going to find these 12 perfect angels capable of rendering unbiased decisions about how redistricting should be done, I think it's just naive and it's dangerous.
Now it's up to you to decide. Bill Shield, Fox 8 News.
Ohioans rejected the last redistricting proposal on the ballot. It was part of a 2005 package of 4 election reform measures that all failed. None of the issues won in any of Ohio's 88 counties.
And coming up next, one of the more unusual results of Ohio's redistricting plan.
2 sitting members of Congress face each other. Republican Jim Renacci and Democrat Betty Sutton go head-to-head. We will talk with both candidates next.
And later, Joe the Plumber and his 15 minutes of political fame. Are they up for just getting started? This race for Congress against Marcy Kaptur. Hear from both of them as You Decide 2012 of Fox 8 News Election Special continues. A member of Congress versus a member of Congress. It's a Northeast Ohio showdown only made possible by redistricting.
Welcome back to You Decide 2012, a Fox 8 News election special. I'm Jennifer Jordan, along with Christy Capel and Gabe Spiegel.
Fox 8's Wayne Dawson is here now with a look at a unique race in Ohio's 16th district.
Well, unique indeed. Republican Congressman Jim Renacci facing Democratic Congresswoman Betty Sutton. Only one will keep their job in Washington. Recently, I talked with both candidates about this unusual election. Here's Congressman Renacci.
Betty Sutton. She works for Pelosi, not for you.
I'll never understand these guys in Washington, like Jim Renacci.
The race for the newly drawn 16th congressional district seat is as bitter as it is unusual. For the first time in recent memory, 2 incumbents are fighting each other to remain in Congress.
How are you? Jim Renacci. Wayne Dawson. Nice to meet you.
I sat down with first-term Republican Congressman Jim Renacci, who admits running in a new district against a fellow congressperson is challenging.
For me, it's about getting out. It's about shaking hands. It's about getting people to know who I am. And when people get to know me, they see that I'm a guy from a blue-collar union family that knew that there was opportunity here in this country to make a difference. And I worked hard and did all the right things and was successful.
If elected, what would you do for the residents of the 16th congressional district?
This election is all about jobs and the economy. I've been someone who has created over 1,500 jobs, employed over 3,000 people in my career. I understand how certainty and predictability is needed. Yeah, well, the interesting thing for me, Wayne, is that I'm about getting things done. So if you look at my history after 18 months, I'm proud to say that I'm the co-founder of a bipartisan group, 8 Republicans and 8 Democrats.
How closely aligned are you with the Romney-Ryan ticket?
I think people were tired of what's going on in Washington. And look, I ran in 2 years ago because I was tired of what was going on in Washington. And I thought the people that are there are the problem. We don't have Democrat problems and we don't have Republican problems. We have American problems. And no matter what I've done, I believe we need to come together and do that. So if people look at my last 18 months, they're going to see that I believe in Ohio. They're going to see that I also believe in getting things accomplished. And they're also going to see I believe we're working across the line to get those done.
So does that mean if President Barack Obama is reelected, he'll work with the Democratic president?
Well, he's our president. And again, what I'd be more willing to support is for him to come over and talk to us and get to know us. And it's one thing I've been very disappointed in the last 18 months. I've heard past presidents have come to get to know the members of Congress. President Obama has not done that.
But first, there's a race to win against a popular 3-term incumbent fighting for her political survival.
Well, look, Betty Sutton's a nice woman. She wants to serve her constituents. The difference is our visions. Her vision of bigger government, more taxes. The differences between her and I are extreme. I mean, she's a career politician. I'm somebody who has created jobs. I understand that you got to pull regulations back. I'm not saying you have to get rid of all regulations, but there are some extreme regulations that do hurt job creation. We are so different that this should be an easy race for people to decide. If you like the direction the country's going today, you would vote for my opponent. If you disagree with the direction the country's going, you should vote for me.
Now to Renacci's opponent, Congresswoman Betty Sutton. She's been in Congress longer, but the withdrawing of her district may have her at a disadvantage in trying to keep her job.
There's a lot of folks out there for me to go and meet and talk with and hear from.
That's the challenge for Betty Sutton. The newly drawn 16th congressional district includes parts of Cuyahoga, Summit, Medina, Portage, Stark, and all of Wayne County. It contains only 23% of Sutton's old district, but 50% of Republican Jim Renace's. I sat down with the Congresswoman to talk about the most difficult race of her political career. Congresswoman, talk about the challenges in facing a fellow incumbent.
Well, you know, the job is the same. People in Northeast Ohio, regardless of party, are just looking for a way to make a better quality of life for themselves and their families. So the district lines have changed, but my work really hasn't. I'm going to continue to fight for jobs.
Sutton then talks about the differences between her and Congressman Renace, differences that echo President Barack Obama's message in his re-election campaign.
So I think rather than my opponent who is asking to change Medicare into a voucher program, which would cause seniors to pay more, I would suggest that that we should cut those tax breaks for companies that ship jobs overseas. We ought to cut those oil company subsidies, and frankly, we ought to make people pay a fair share at the very top. So those deep, deep tax cuts for the super wealthy also would be a good way to cut back.
One of the major problems in Washington right now is gridlock. Say Mitt Romney is elected president and you're reelected as a congresswoman. Could you work with him?
When I went into Congress, we had a Republican president, and I certainly didn't throw up my hands and say, oh no, we're not going to do anything. We have to find a way to make things done, and I've proven that I can do that. You know, I'm going to keep trying to make things work for the people I represent.
I'm a voter in the 16th Congressional District, but I don't know much about Betty Sutton. Why should I vote for you?
I think that people will make a decision to vote for us because they're looking for someone with a positive vision for Northeast Ohio and who can get things done. And whether it's been fighting to create and protect jobs both in our auto manufacturing industry and beyond, or stepping up to make sure our veterans get the benefits that they've earned, or stepping up and challenging both parties to rein in unethical practices sometimes used by lobbyists to woo legislators. They know that I am there fighting for them.
Finally, Sutton talks about the goal that is her message for this year's race for Congress.
I have been long offended by this part of the country being referred to as the Rust Belt, and so I have a mission to rebrand us in word and in deed as the opportunity belt that we are, and this election is going to be a big part of that.
Washington insiders have called the Renace-Sutton matchup one of the top 5 most important races in the nation. It's a key congressional seat in a key battleground state. Back to you guys.
Wayne, thank you. Renace Sutton is just one of the many battles for a seat in Congress here in Northeast Ohio.
Up next, the race to occupy the seat vacated by longtime Congressman Steve LaTourette. David Joyce versus Dale Blanchard, who will emerge as Northeast Ohio's newest member of Congress.
And later, Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur fights to keep her job. But Joe the Plumber has other ideas. Hear from both candidates as You Decide 2012, a Fox 8 News election special continues.
For more, visit fox8.com.
We turn our attention now to Ohio's 14th district, where longtime Congressman Steve LaTourette has resigned.
Vying for a seat, a prosecutor and an accountant. Welcome back to You Decide 2012, a Fox 8 News election special.
Fox 8's Tracy McCool is here now with a look at the candidates in this race.
Well, residents of the 14th district will elect a first-time member of Congress on November 6th. I talked with Republican candidate David Joyce and his Democrat opponent Dale Blanchard. Let's start with Geauga County prosecutor David Joyce. David Joyce has been Geauga County prosecutor for 24 years. Republican leaders of the 14th district picked him to replace Representative LaTourette on the November ballot. The Russell Township Republican and LaTourette come from similar successful backgrounds. Both were prosecutors for many years. Will you share the same philosophies as Representative LaTourette?
I don't have the glasses and the beard, but we came from the same background as prosecutors, so we tend to look at things the same way. I can't tell you that I'm going to vote the same way Steve did all the time, but I think we're both considered moderate in that we're willing to reach out to each other and make agreements with people because we have to do what's in the best interest of the people of the 14th district.
Joyce says once he gets to Washington, he will tackle the deficit.
The deficit is strangling our society, and it's bad for our children. I want to make sure that our children have the same America that we grew up in. And there's no more games. You'll get no excuses from me. I want to tell people the truth here so they can make their plans and adjust for the future accordingly. A lot of people will tell you that things are going okay. They're not good, they're not necessarily bad, but the reason they can't do things going forward is because they don't know what's going to be out there a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now. So we need to get taxes set and certain and flat for everyone to understand.
What's your take on health care?
I am not a big fan of the bill, but I am a fan of the fact that there's parts of that bill that are really good, and that having been somebody who was in law school until they were 25, having kids under to 26 is a good idea. The fact that there's pre-existing conditions are covered are a great idea. And the other thing is the state pooling and allowing more people to get into a pool, because I know as the county what we did is we were getting with a bunch of other counties in a risk-sharing authority, and it caused the cost of our insurance to go down in that the premiums didn't jump 20%. Yes, they did go up, but nowhere near as much as they were in the private sector for other people.
What's your main message to people?
I'm an honest guy who's going to tell you the truth. And I'm not going to stand there and beat my chest and tell you things that are a party line. I want to be that person. I want to explain to people and fight for them in D.C. and make Washington, D.C. do what we have to do every night at our kitchen table, balance our budgets.
David Joyce's opponent is hoping his business experience will earn him a ticket to Washington. Solon's Dale Blanchard hopes the 9th time is the charm in his run for Congress. Dale Blanchard grew up in Cleveland and graduated from John Adams High School. The Democrat is raising his family in Solon today. The accountant feels his background in business will help solve some tough issues.
One of the problems I think we have in Washington is we have a lot of attorneys in Congress. And I think we need a few less attorneys and a few more accountants or people with financial backgrounds.
Blanchard says the stimulus packages we've seen haven't been aggressive enough and says we need a much larger tax cut.
I'm going to propose a 5% tax cut on the first $150,000 of income for individuals and on the first $300,000 for married couples. So, for example, if you're a family and you have an income of $80,000, that'll be a $4,000 tax cut for you. When people have more money, they'll start spending it. And American businesses will be faced with stronger demand for their products. And when that happens, businesses will go ahead and hire more people.
As for health care, Blanchard says although it isn't perfect, the Affordable Care Act is a step in the right direction.
The number one group of people who don't have health insurance are people who work every day. People who are on welfare, they get Medicaid, so they have health insurance. But it's really the working poor. People who are working in jobs where their employers aren't providing them with health insurance. And usually that kind of goes hand in hand with the fact that they probably have low wages.
You have run for Congress 9 times. Why do you feel this year will be different?
When you don't win an election, it hurts. But you get up the next day, and or maybe 2 days later, and you say, well, you know what, we still have problems. I think I still have the ability to resolve those problems, and you just move on. I have an accounting degree from Cleveland State, and when you get an accounting degree, you don't just learn about accounting, you learn about all aspects of business, including economics, finance, and money and banking. So with these tools, I think I possess the ability to go ahead to Washington and actually do something good for the people of this country.
Blanchard and Joyce disagree on how to properly fund Social Security and Medicare. Dale Blanchard is in favor of raising FICA taxes, while David Joyce feels the age of eligibility needs to be pushed back, though not for people already on the program. Now back to you guys.
All right, Tracy, thanks so much. Up next, the congressional district that spreads across Ohio's Lake Shore from west to east.
Marcy Kaptur defeated Dennis Kucinich in the primary. Can she hold on to her seat in Congress?
She will have to beat the man known as Joe the Plumber to win. Hear from both candidates when You Decide 2012. A Fox 8 News election special continues. We turn our attention now to Ohio's 9th District, the span of cities across Ohio's Lake Shore.
Welcome back to You Decide 2012, a Fox 8 News election special.
Fox 8's Todd Meany is here now to profile both candidates. Todd.
Thanks, guys. Are Joe the Plumber's 15 minutes of fame up, or is his political career just beginning? Recently, I talked with both candidates in this race. Let's start with the incumbent, Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur.
It was a difficult primary for Marcy Kaptur, defeating longtime friend and colleague Dennis Kucinich in the Democratic primary for the 9th Congressional District.
Dennis nor I, neither of us chose this. This was done to us, and that I will do my very best to serve them. And our voting records were very similar on the major issues.
Because of redistricting, Ohio's 10th Congressional District is being moved to southern Ohio. What's left will be divided, meaning that Marcy Kaptur will now campaign to new voters in Lorain and Cuyahoga counties.
One of the unfortunate things that was done in the gerrymandering by the Republicans in Columbus is they cut communities apart. So, for example, Parma is cut in half. People of Parma don't appreciate that. I'm going to represent them. They've been wonderful. They've been welcoming. We set up a campaign office there.
Kaptur is now campaigning to be reelected this November against Republican candidate Samuel Joseph Wurzelbacher, a.k.a. Joe the Plumber. She feels their differences on issues like health care will encourage voters to support her.
Marcy Kaptur has been serving the Toledo area for the past 20 years, but now with redistricting, she gains a whole other area, including Lorain and Cuyahoga County. And she says that's not a problem because the areas, although about 100 miles apart, really aren't that different.
Well, you know, when we voted for the automotive recovery bill, that affected Parma as much as it affected Avon Lake, Lorain. Whether you're in the eastern end of the district or in the western end of the district, automotive supply jobs, all of the related sectors in steel, aluminum, glass, electronics, all of that comes into play.
How are you able to relate the needs of the people of the Cleveland area to the people of the Toledo area?
We are a major distribution hub for the entire continent. So we can't think parochially. And I think that's one of the advantages of this district, actually. It gives me the opportunity to plug in, basically, communities that have related strengths.
Marcy Kaptur maintains a powerful position on the House Appropriations Committee, and with Ohio losing 2 seats because of redistricting, she's trying to maintain the Buckeye presence at a time when Ohio seems to be losing out.
Ohio has had a washout, and that leaves all this burden. I said I need shoulder pads from the Cleveland Browns to help me handle the burden that I know is placed on my shoulders from this region. So our seniority becomes even more important.
And Congresswoman Kaptur says she will continue to shoulder that burden, representing the new 9th Congressional District.
Now to Marcy Kaptur's opponent. His name, Samuel Wurzelbacher. The nation knows him as Joe the Plumber, and he says he can fix what's wrong with Ohio.
You may not recognize Samuel Wurzelbacher by his face, but you've probably heard his nickname a few times.
Joe the Plumber.
Joe the Plumber.
And I'm happy to talk to you, Joe.
Joe the Plumber, a.k.a. Samuel Joseph Wurzelbacher, is running for Congress. Joe gained fame back in 2008 when Barack Obama came into his neighborhood. Joe was trying to buy a plumbing business and found out he would get taxed on it more because it would be worth $250,000.
My government doesn't want me owning a business. And then Barack Obama shows up and he's talking about, well, if you make this much money, you're rich. I said, what the hell? Why does he get to say who's rich and who's not? And then especially for small business owners. I mean, $250,000 is all well and good, but that's not what you're taking home. That's not what you get to go take the family with on vacations.
Joe's story was the topic of the McCain-Obama debates, and he became an instant celebrity.
Yeah, I got that voice that millions of Americans finally wanted, and I had it. Instead of throwing a boot at the TV, I actually got to speak to somebody like you and say, this is what I believe and this is what I think. And hundreds of thousands of people said, yeah, I think the same way.
It was right here in this driveway 4 years ago that Joe met Barack Obama. He became Joe the Plumber, gained all that national attention, and he decided to use that newfound fame to do something important. Not just make a run for Congress, but also start up an organization that helps out some true Americans.
Which includes helping out America's veterans. Joe is a veteran of the Air Force and started a non-profit organization called Alaska's Healing Hearts.
We take them up to Alaska, do great things with them, make sure they get the benefits that were promised to them by the federal government.
Joe is running against Democratic incumbent and longtime Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur in the new 9th District. He feels he is much different than his opponent, especially when it comes to support from special interests.
I have integrity. I have not sold out. I have not sold out to any PACs, political actions committees. If they want to endorse me, fine, get behind me. I'm not going to come kiss your butt to get your money and have to owe you a favor later. Unlike Marcy Kaptur, who is backed by a lot of different political action committees.
Living in the Toledo area, Joe is now getting familiar with the new additions to the 9th District. And for Joe, it doesn't mean campaign commercials and billboards. He wants to meet them face to face.
All the way from over to Parma, all the way back, obviously along the coastline is where most of the district is located. It doesn't go very far down in the state, but it's all door to door.
Joe understands that he is the underdog in this race, but he stands firm in his belief of less government and making sure that a vote for Joe is a vote for action.
I'm promoting the ideals and what I believe in this country. And so I'm not going to Congress to sell out for 2 years or 4 years or 6 years, however long I end up being there for. It's to go there to promote what America is. We are an exceptional country. We're a great country, but we need to slim down the size of government. We want real change? Stop electing the same people we always do.
Marcy Kaptur, who took office back in 1983, is the longest serving woman in the House of Representatives. Guys, this is Joe the Plumber's first race for a congressional seat.
All right, Todd, thank you. Well, up next, we get you ready for Election Day and share some final thoughts.
You Decide 2012, a Fox 8 News election special continues.
We'll be right back. Voters in Cleveland have a crucial school levy on the ballot this year. The fate of 66,000 students is at stake. The $15 million levy promises to phase out underperforming charter schools and reward the good ones. It would also change the system of teacher layoffs and institute teacher merit pay. The cost of the levy for a single-family home ranges from $75 a year up to $605 a year, depending on which neighborhood you live in.
We want to remind you to join us on November 6th on the air and online for complete election coverage on Fox 8 News and Fox8.com. We will be the first on the air with local election results with Fox 8 News at 10 and nonstop coverage on our website.
And we also want to let you know that our voting hours will be from 6:30 a.m. until 7:30 p.m. We encourage you to get out there and let your voices be heard on Election Day.
Thank you for joining us for this Fox 8 News election special, You Decide 2012.
We hope our interviews with the candidates have given you more insight into what they stand for as you decide who will earn your vote.
Our thanks to the candidates for their time. For Christy Capel, Gabe Spiegel, and the entire Fox 8 News team, I'm Jennifer Jordan. So long.